Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, a podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder and chief academic officer here at Newsela, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So over the last two episodes, we've talked about what good teacher AI use looks like. We've outlined some of the conditions for this, like the timing of when you turn to the AI, the way that you treat the revision, the metacognitive reflection that you apply to any suggested feedback that you get from the AI, and ultimately the ownership that you need to assert and maintain over whatever materials you use that are created by AI. The focus for today is on teachers in their first 5 years of teaching, for whom these conditions are, I think, the hardest to meet. And yet those are the teachers who most need to develop these habits, because the habits you form early will go on to shape your entire career. I think early career teachers are in a trap. They're most likely to use AI tools because of the habituation in undergraduate studies. They're under the most time pressure. They have the least experience to fall back on, and they're most vulnerable to burning out. This is where the research that we've been talking about becomes urgent. So everyone's first year of teaching is different, but I think there are some commonalities. I'll venture to say that you probably thought, as I did, that you knew something about teaching because you'd been a student. And maybe you'd had a teaching practicum that gave you some experience. One way or another, you probably arrived in the classroom with a bit of chutzpah, and you quickly learned humility. My first year of teaching, I taught Spanish in a high school in rural Georgia. I was the only world language teacher in the entire district, small district though it was. The one thing I had going for me was that the textbook my district was using happened to be the exact same textbook that I had used a little more than 10 years earlier. But textbooks have their limitations. We probably don't have to enumerate here. So what I needed was a plan. I would have loved a scope and sequence, a unit plan. I would have settled for a lesson plan. And believe me, I went looking. I had a mentor who didn't know anything about teaching language. So I went looking. I went online. It was 1994 and the internet was just reaching educators. We didn't have web browsers. We had user forums. And I searched and searched for lesson plans. Nearly every night I went online trying to find answers to the millions of questions I had about teaching and learning. And simply, what should I be doing in class? And I was under time pressure. I was grading papers at night. I was staying late to prep. My Sundays were spent thinking about the coming week. And all that is still true for early career teachers today. But now there's AI. And AI can generate a lesson plan in seconds, an assignment in seconds, feedback for students in seconds. And I think the temptation to use it is real. And it's not a character flaw to feel that temptation. It's rational given the constraints that you're under as a first-year teacher. So what happens? You go on to use AI to generate a lesson for tomorrow. You read it over, maybe you make a small change, and then you teach it. I want to talk about what results from this based on what we know from the research. One result is that students in your classroom are likely to feel less engaged. You remember from the Cogan-Drew research that we referred to in the last episode, when material doesn't have the teacher's voice in it, when it's uniform and generic, students tend to feel less interested, less important. And here's where early career is different from experienced. An experienced teacher might think, I should have personalized that more. Let me revise and try again next year. An early career teacher thinks, they're not interested in this topic. I'm not reaching them. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Because you don't have the experience yet to know the difference between my lesson was generic and I'm a bad teacher. They feel the same. And I know I spent many a drive home that first year thinking that I was a bad teacher. And the thing is that the disengagement I was experiencing from my students was real. It wasn't my imagination. I was born and raised in New York City, and I was having a really hard time trying to relate to students in rural Georgia. One example, I literally never been to Hardee's, but I knew it was a fast food joint in town. We were too small to have a McDonald's or a Burger King. So I thought I'd use it in my sentence on the verb comer, to eat. I wrote comemos en Hardee's. We eat at Hardee's. But I spelled Hardee's like Thomas Hardy with a Y. The class absolutely lost it. I knew at the time I had their attention at least, but it was mortifying. And there was no one there to remind me that the core of what I was attempting, to relate the material to the kids, to personalize it, was a good intention. It was a good move. It was just the execution that was off. But of course, sometimes that happens, especially in your first year of teaching. I didn't know that yet, and I blamed myself, and I already felt unsupported because I wasn't getting a lot of mentorship. So if you're a first-year teacher these days, you're almost certainly not getting trained on how to use AI well. If we remember, 18% of teachers got formal guidance in the past year. Early career teachers likely got even less. So you're feeling isolated, you're interpreting student disengagement as personal failure, and you're exhausted. And that's where the research on early career teacher burnout kicks in. The reason teachers leave in the first 5 years are feeling unprepared, the student behavior, lack of support, and the big one, not feeling like they're making a difference. If you're already feeling unprepared because you're doing everything from scratch every day, and then you add student disengagement caused by generic materials, but you don't know that, you very quickly get to, maybe I'm not meant for this. And then you leave. And teaching loses someone who would have become great, but who never got the chance to develop the skills that would have made them effective. And this isn't just about individual teachers. This is about the profession at large. We already lose early career teachers at alarming rates. And the ones we lose aren't necessarily the weakest. They're often the thoughtful ones, the ones who care deeply, the ones who are self-critical enough to keep trying. When those teachers burn out in year 3 and leave, they take with them years of growth that they would have had. They don't become the experienced mentor teachers that the next generation needs. And the pipeline, as a result, gets weaker. The schools left without them, often the most under-resourced schools, where student need is the highest, end up with less experienced teaching staff, which means students in the schools that most need skilled teachers get the least skilled teachers. As much as anything, it's an equity story. I would bet that early career teachers in high-poverty schools are using AI passively, their students are disengaging, and as a result, these are teachers who are at greater risk of burning out, of their schools losing them, and of that gap widening. So this isn't just about helping individual early career teachers. It's about the teaching profession's ability to sustain itself in the age of AI. So what would actually help? First, explicit guidance on lesson planning without AI. Research shows that the questions that one wrestles with before going to AI are a necessary part of the productive friction, productive failure even, that leads to longer-term learning and growth. Mentors need to guide and verify that early career teachers are capable of thoughtful lesson planning as humans without the AI. Second, explicit permission and support to revise AI materials. Not just that AI is available, but guidance saying, when you use AI to draft a lesson, you need to revise it, and here's what good revision looks like. Here's the time built into your schedule to do it, and here's a mentor who will ask you about your thinking. Third, mentorship that models good AI use. Not just here's how to use the tool, but here's how to anticipate student thinking, here's what feedback design looks like, and here's how to know whether students are really learning. The early days of developing pedagogical content knowledge. You want a mentor who says, I used AI to find 10 possible activities, here's the 2 I chose for my students, and here's why. A mentor who asks, what did your students struggle with? What will you do differently next time? Fourth, normalization that first lessons won't be perfect. That productive struggle applies to teachers as well as to students. You're learning to teach, you're going to make mistakes. It's not a sign that you're bad, it's a sign that you're learning. And the feedback you get from those mistakes is how you improve. The less secure you feel in that struggle, the more likely you are to turn to the bots to save you. And fifth, protected time for reflection. You need time to think, what did I learn about my students today? What surprised me? What will I do differently? The reflection is where learning happens for teachers as well as for students. And it's in those moments of reflection that we head off the premature desire to turn to the AI to solve the what am I doing tomorrow problem. So here's what could happen, I think, if those things were in place. A first-year teacher could use AI to help draft a lesson. They could revise it. They could adapt examples to their students. They could reorder steps based on what they know about how their kids think. They can teach it. Their students can feel their teachers thinking in it. And as a result, the students can feel more engaged. The teacher will notice the difference. They'll feel it went better. They're not interpreting it as I'm not good enough, but as that revision mattered. The personalization and the moves that I made a difference. And they're going to get feedback from a mentor. I see you added that question about what they already know, and that's good. Did you notice how engaged the students were by that? The teacher starts to connect the dots, revision, personalization, student engagement, not by accident, but by design. And over time, the teacher develops the habit of revision. They start to anticipate student thinking, they develop their own voice as a teacher, and they stop blaming themselves for disengagement and start asking, how is this material designed? What should I change? And by year 3 or 4, the teachers developed real skill, not because they're naturally gifted, but because they've had support, mentorship, and explicit focus on the thinking that matters. And then they stay. They become the mentor teacher for the next generation. And let's remember that teachers entering the profession since 2023 are the first ever to begin teaching alongside AI. How they choose to assimilate this technology into their teaching will have implications for every generation to follow. The research we've covered over the last 2 episodes isn't abstract. It has real implications for early career teachers right now, especially as Claude makes a play for teacher engagement with Claude for Teachers. So you're under time pressure, You're using AI, you're making choices about whether to revise or use as is. You're interpreting what you see your students doing as a sign of your own competence or lack thereof. And the truth is, all of this is happening without much support, without guidance, without mentorship, without explicit recognition that you're learning a craft, and that craft requires productive struggle. I would love to hear your experience grappling with AI, especially as you're completing a practicum this summer, thinking about the fall. If you're in that situation, what would help you use AI the way I've been talking about? If you're supporting early career teachers, what's helping or what's getting in the way in the use of AI? Again, I think the stakes here are real because early career teachers right now will shape the profession for the next 20 years. And if we lose them to burnout, especially the thoughtful ones, we all lose. Thanks, as always, for listening to AI in the Classroom Daily. Next episode, we're going to go upstream. We're going to look at where the habits actually form in teacher preparation. And we're going to ask, how can we prepare teachers so that they enter the classroom ready to use AI thoughtfully and not passively? We will see you then.